Today we are going to understand a very important concept in macroeconomics known as Phillips curve. So before we begin, let me ask you a very simple question. If more people get jobs in economy, what do you think will happen to prices? Exactly, prices usually increases. Now let's understand why this happens. So before understanding the Phillips curve, let's quickly understand two very important terms, that is inflation and unemployment. So inflation basically refers to continuous increase in the general price level in a economy, whereas unemployment refers to a situation where people are willing to work, are able to work, but are unable to find jobs. That is known as unemployment. Now these two concepts are connected through the Phillips curve. So the flip curve basically shows an inverse relationship between unemployment and inflation. This means when unemployment increases, inflation decreases, and when unemployment decreases, inflation increases. So this relationship was introduced by the economist A.W. Phillips in 1958. Now this graph represents the Phillips curve. So on y-axis we have inflation and on x-axis we have unemployment. Okay, the downward sloping curve is showing the trade-off between these two, inflation and unemployment. When unemployment is low, inflation is high, and when inflation is low, unemployment is high. Now the question is, why does this happens? So the reason is, when people are employed, their income increases. That means more jobs, more income. And when their income increases, this leads to increase in the demand. And when demand of goods and service increases, this leads to increase in the prices. And when prices increases, this leads to inflation. So according to flip curves, lower unemployment leads to higher inflation. Lower unemployment means higher jobs, which ultimately leads to inflation. Now the question arises here is, does this relationship always hold true in reality? So the answer is no. In some situations, both inflation and unemployment increases together, and this situation is known as stagflation. So stagflation became very important during the 1970s oil crisis, when oil prices increased sharply, which led to production cost increase in the production cost, and which ultimately lead to increase in the unemployment. And because of this, at the same time prices were also increasing, so the inflation also increased as well. So this was something which was directly contradicting the original Phillips curve. But the story doesn't end here. When people expect inflation to rise further, this behavior changes. Like when you know that the prices are going to increase, what will you do? You will demand more and you will try to stock everything with you, right? So the same thing happens with the worker. They demand and their expectations increases, which ultimately leads to higher wages. The worker starts demanding for higher wages because they are thinking about that prices will increase in future. So when the workers demand higher wages, firm also face higher production costs, and when prices when this happens, the firm also increases the prices, and when prices increase again, the workers demand even more higher wages. Like this, their expectations their expectations are high, that means they starts demanding for higher wages, and when they starts demanding for higher wages, this increases the production cost, okay, which force firms to increase the price, and again this thing happens. Again the prices are high and the worker starts demanding more wages, so this continuously happens. Okay, so this is a continuous cycle, and this cycle is known as wage price spiral, and this is one of the reason why inflation can persist for a long period of time, right? Now let's understand the difference between the short run and long run in flip curves. So in short run the trade-off exists, all right, but this doesn't happens in the long run. This trade-off disappears. Why? Because over the time people adjust to their expectations. In long run the economy returns to its natural rate of unemployment, and this normal level of unemployment that exists even in the stable economy. So in long run increasing inflation cannot permanently reduce the unemployment. So to conclude, I want to say that according to Flip Curve, there is a inverse relationship between inflation and employment in short run. However, this experience of stagflation showed that this relationship does not always hold. The expectations and the wage price spiral play a very important role in understanding the inflation, and in long run, the trade-off between inflation and unemployment disappears. I hope you have understood the topic.